What is going on, everybody? And welcome to a brand new segment on the channel called the Neon Spotlight. This is going to be the segment on my channel where I go through the Neon production company's entire filmography from the first film that they produced all the way until I get current. And as you very well know, if you've been following me for a while, the A24 Archive is a series I've been doing for 60 some films now. And I've been having a blast going through A24's catalog and watching all of the movies that they've produced. And Neon is becoming huge in the film industry. They have produced so many quality movies that are absolutely incredible, and they did not start producing films until 2017. And so their catalog is much smaller than A24 is, but I've been so impressed with the level of quality of the films that they have been putting out over the past several years. And so I thought it would be fun, similarly to A24, to go back through Neon's whole catalog and watch their movies just to kind of see the growth and what movies I really love and what movies I don't love as much. And there are a lot of films in their catalog I have not seen, and that would be the first film that they produced that I'm going to be discussing today that is actually directed by a filmmaker who made a film called Time Crimes that I actually reviewed a while back on the channel and really enjoyed. And this film has some great actors in it. It stars Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis, and the premise was absolutely fascinating. And the movie I want to be discussing with you today is Colossal. Colossal is directed by Nacho Vigalondo. A woman discovers that severe catastrophic events are somehow connected to the mental breakdown from which she's suffering. So, as I said, I was very excited to watch this movie, especially because I really enjoyed Vigalondo's film Time Crimes, and unfortunately I was not a huge fan of this movie. I think it bites off a little bit more than it can chew. I think it has a lot of really great ideas, and I think what he's going for here is an incredibly important message, but the execution is so sloppy, the pacing is really bad, it becomes incredibly bland in moments where they could spend a lot more time growing these characters or making you care more for these characters, but instead it just feels really uneven, and I'll talk about it as a whole when I break the film down. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Gloria, played by Anne Hathaway, who is dating Tim, played by Dan Stevens. And their relationship is on the rocks. She is really struggling with her mental health. She's struggling to keep a job. And Tim is getting incredibly frustrated, and they get in fights consistently until one day she stumbles home drunk. He gets really mad at her for not telling him where she was. And he ends up saying, "Hey, all your stuff's packed up. I need you to leave. I don't want you here anymore." So very early on, she ends up moving back to her parents' old house in her hometown where she went to school. And she gets there and she's living in this house that's really decrepit and old. There's nothing in there. She buys herself an air mattress. She's really just kind of coasting. And one day she runs into Oscar, played by Jason Sudeikis, and the two of them went to school together, and they were very close friends when they were young. And she's kind of like taken aback by it. And she finds out he's running this bar in the small town, and he ends up offering her a job to work at the bar, and the two of them start to become close. Again, he kind of sees all of her flaws very early on and all of the things that she's struggling with, and he seems to be a very helpful person early on in the movie. Well, shortly after, we find out that there are these series of events happening in Korea where this giant monster is attacking people in Korea, and they don't know what's happening with it, but we shortly find out after it's connected to something with Gloria, where when she goes to this park near where she lives at a specific time in the day, that her anger and all of the things associated with her mental health trigger this thing appearing and causing all this chaos in Korea. And the entirety of the film is her trying to figure out how this connection has established and if there's any way that she can stop it. So as I said, I was not a huge fan of this movie, unfortunately, and I think it has a really cool concept. And it's something that I really respect, but I think it's very flawed in its execution. I will say, for starters, the performances here are all really great. I honestly think this is one of Jason Sudeikis' best performances outside of Ted Lasso. His character goes through a lot in this movie as far as emotional shift. He starts off as a seemingly nice guy and becomes very aggressive and mean, and he does a really great job playing both ends of that spectrum, and I was really impressed with his performance. Anne Hathaway, throughout the years, I've always been really impressed with with her as an actress. I think she brings a lot to the table, no matter what she's working on, even if the project isn't as great. And I think that remains true here. I really enjoyed her performance, and I think she had great chemistry with Jason Sudeikis' character, and the two played off each other really well. I liked the way this was shot, especially the effects with the creatures that show up in this movie. They both have a very unique design. They look very different than you would expect, and I really like that there's a lot of attention to detail there. And I think with Vigalondo doing science fiction movies, especially time crimes, he knew exactly what he wanted this movie to look like when he went into it. And I think he pays really close attention to detail and makes that element of the story really interesting. The problem that I have with this movie is it's trying to do way too much in a way that by the very end of the film, I feel like there is a hard-hitting punch at the end that works, but so much of the rest of the movie is just left unresolved and in a place that I was just like, meh, I don't really care about what I just watched. I feel like Anne Hathaway's character, for being the central focus of this movie, we get that she has issues with alcoholism and that she can't really get her life together and that things have kind of fallen apart for her. But I don't feel like she has enough moments to really make us care all that much through the entirety of the runtime of the film. And she's kind of a jerk early on in the movie. And not saying that the character has to be likable the entire time, but there's just something about the pacing of this film, and there's so many moments with characters just kind of like sitting together and having conversations that don't really provide character growth. They just feel kind of like a hangout movie, which never feels like what the director is trying to go for. I also think on the inverse, you look at Oscar's character, played by Jason Sudeikis, who starts off as this very seemingly nice guy and slowly shifts into this very controlling, manipulative asshole. And it comes out of nowhere. It really, like, where he starts doing that, you're just kind of like, okay, this would have worked a little bit better if early on in the film we got glimpses to him always being this way. I feel like that drastic shift and it kind of coming out of nowhere is like, okay, I see what you're trying to do, but like it really doesn't make any sense, especially with how the characters communicate early on. He develops this really intense possessiveness over her character in a very short span of time, but I feel like when you've known each other for that long, that her character probably would have had an idea that he's always like that. And so that was, to me, it just felt very scatterbrained. And like the entire message of the film becomes like the possessiveness of men and this toxic masculine urge to like control the situation, or like the fragility of men and their masculinity. And there's so many great ideas here that I feel like if explored by someone different, possibly a woman, because this is directed by a man, there's not a whole lot of delicacy here. And I'm not saying men can't cover these subject matters. Obviously, it's important for men to be able to kind of self-reflect and be like, why do men have these masculine tendencies? Why do they get fragile in these situations? And I think there's a way to pick these things apart, but Vigalondo doesn't do it in a way that's all that thought-provoking or compelling. It's just one character kind of turning on a dime and becoming incredibly toxic and aggressive. And the entire time I was watching the movie, I'm like, okay, you have this allegory with these creatures, and there's something really fascinating that you can do with this, but the creatures to me always felt kind of secondhand and like it was just a part of the story and not so much an overwhelming symbolism for everything that was going on. And I really wanted them to tap a little bit more into Anne Hathaway's mental health and what kind of brought her to this point and dive a little deeper into her character, but I felt like her character was relatively shallow, and so was Jason Sudeikis's, which made the movie a lot less interesting. There's some great comedic beats, there's some nice talent surrounding this film, but I just feel like it falls short in a lot of ways. And for this director making a movie that I thought was really great, this just felt like a downgrade in every single way for me. So have you seen Colossal? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments. I thought this movie was a disappointment. I think it has a really cool concept, but unfortunately the structure and the overall payoff didn't do it for me. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. Obviously, like the neon spotlight that I'm doing now, I'm coming up with a lot of new concepts for material for the channel. There's all of these different ideas that I have going forward, and it's been really awesome to see the channel grow and to see you all leave such thoughtful and wonderful comments consistently. I'm really appreciative of the community that I have here on YouTube. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.